Okay, Shabbat Shalom. For those of you watching this online, my name is Henry Thrun, and I am one of the Torah commentators here at Corner Fringe. Recently, I did a commentary for the Shof team portion, and it discussed human authority in the Torah. Now, I've heard some believers say they won't listen to man, just God. I believe this is because many who come out of mainstream Christianity feel like they were let down or even betrayed by previous teachers or mentors. After all, we humans are all fallible beings. But is the correct response to then never listen to any man? Let's go to the Torah. Deuteronomy 16:18, you shall appoint judges and officers in all your gates, which Yahweh your God gives you, according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with just judgment. God instructed his people to appoint humans as leaders. I did a commentary a while back about how governmental voting is a biblical concept. Churches also need to choose and appoint leaders. If you're looking for a church home, you can choose your leadership by choosing your church. One reason God set up human authority is because he speaks through people. A lot of the Bible is quoting prophets. Another reason God instituted human leadership is because he wants to see how we handle being under authority. If we can't submit to authority that we can see and hear, how can God expect us to submit to him? During our vacation Bible school rehearsals and practices this summer, a lot of kids would be up on stage here making noise and goofing around. However, when the actual performance happened in front of a sanctuary full of parents, people watching them, all the children behaved. But what was their real attitude then? Were they obedient or rebellious? And what about us? Are we obedient or rebellious? Now, I understand how it can be hard for those who are let down by past leadership to submit to the authority of other leadership. That's why God instructs leaders to use just judgment in this verse. This is expounded upon as we continue. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show partiality, nor take a bribe. For a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. God instructed them to treat everyone fairly and equally. Now, bribes aren't necessarily financial. Someone may try to appeal to a friendship or relationship with the judges or officers. They may try to play on the judge's emotions by expressing they're in a bad situation or a victim of circumstances. We see this currently in the media. People trying to influence others by stirring up their emotions. Leadership has to deny their emotions when settling disputes. They have to use God's standard, his Torah, for instruction on how to judge situations. God's Torah also shows us his character. We have to show grace and mercy, yet be impartial and just, the way God demonstrated in how he's dealt with his people throughout history. Deuteronomy 16:20, you shall follow what is altogether just, that you may live and inherit the land which Yahweh your God is giving you. The way the judges judged determined how the people would live in the land God gave them. It is crucial to have just leadership in churches, at jobs, at homes, and in government. Otherwise, these places are in danger of falling under God's judgment. There are many examples in Scripture of leaders who did not follow the commands here. They were unjust leaders, and they led the people against God. There are biblical accounts where people then rebelled. Those accounts must be studied diligently, because, as we'll see later, rebelling against authority is no small matter. Oftentimes, people in rebellion attack the authority instead of checking themselves. They'll point out the specks in their leader's eyes to deflect from the plank in their own. No leadership is perfect other than Yeshua's. The Bible has examples of kings and Levites, authority set up by God, who acted wickedly. God always handled the situations. In the end, all unjust judges and rebellious people will be judged by Jesus. Let's continue in this study with the mindset of getting the planks out of our own eyes. Like I tell my kids, let's worry about ourselves. What does God want us to do? Moving ahead to chapter 17, verse 8. If a matter arises which is too hard for you to judge, between degrees of guilt for bloodshed, between one judgment or another, or between one punishment or another, matters of controversy within your gates, then you shall arise and go up to the place which Yahweh your God chooses. The things listed here are in regards to crimes, punishments, and a catch-all, matters of controversy. We have a judicial system and government in place for matters concerning the law of the land. For spiritual matters, like matters involving Torah, we have our spiritual communities. I love how the phrase place your God chooses is used in Torah. Under the Old Covenant, that place was Jerusalem. There are Torah-observant teachers who will disregard the passages we're looking at today because we're not in Jerusalem and we don't have a physical priesthood. The next verse we'll be looking at mentions the Levites. So those teachers will say these passages don't apply to us today. However, under the New Covenant, God has chosen to dwell with and in his believers when we come together in fellowship. So when there are disputes among us, as a body of believers, we need to go to our leadership. Some like to make this concept out to be a cultic mentality. While there are definitely cults that have unjust leaders and misuse authority, we see this as a completely biblical idea. We can't ignore something in the Bible because it's misrepresented by others. This concept doesn't just apply here at Corner Fringe, but to every community of Bible believers. When matters of controversy arise in other fellowships, the people need to go to their leadership as well. And their leadership needs to act justly. And you shall come to the priests, the Levites, and to the judge there in those days, and inquire of them. They shall pronounce upon you the sentence of judgment. So if there was pretty much any dispute that the people couldn't resolve, they were instructed to go to the spiritual leaders and the judges who would then render a verdict. For us today, with all believers being new covenant priests, the spiritual leaders are the church pastors and elders. Again, we see the Torah discuss governmental authorities. There is a concept in the U.S. of separation of church and state. Now, I don't have the time to go into the debate or the history, but regardless of the original intent, we see in the Bible that when God was starting a country, he instructed the people to include the priests and Levites with the judges in matters of law and government. There's also debate about the Christian heritage of our country. Regardless of its past, its future can be a godly one if we do as God instructed and govern the land according to his law. You shall do according to the sentence which they pronounce upon you in that place which Yahweh chooses. And you shall be careful to do according to all that they order you. Again, this is talking about the judges and priests. According to the sentence of the law in which they instruct you, according to the judgment which they tell you, you shall do. You shall not turn aside to the right hand or to the left from the sentence which they pronounce upon you. So law here in verse 11 is, as expected, Torah. The Hebrew word for sentence is P, and is translated elsewhere as tenor or commandment. So what it's saying, based on my limited but improving understanding of Hebrew, is that the people were to walk according to their leaders' interpretation of Torah. And recall the individual tribes appointed their leaders. This is important today because there are disagreements when you go from one Torah-observant community or teacher to another. God gives us this commandment because he doesn't want fractured communities with people turning to the right or the left. He wants communities walking together in unity. If you are a regular attender of a community and are being fed by it, you are putting yourself under its authority. Now, it's different if you're just visiting or checking place out. And it's okay to disagree. But if you disagree strongly enough with the leadership about how to walk out Torah, to the point where you're in rebellion and you're turning away from the congregation to the right or the left, I recommend that you find another community. Perhaps start another one if need be. That may sound drastic, but let's look at the alternative, at what happened when people disobeyed the law we just read here. Now, the man who acts presumptuously and will not heed the priest who stands to minister there before Yahweh your God or the judge, that man shall die. So you shall put away the evil from Israel, and all the people shall hear and fear and no longer act presumptuously. So God instituted a death sentence to those who went against what the leaders stated. This shows just how important God considered obedience to human authority. I hear people who will say how important it is to keep Torah, yet walk in opposition to the authority they put themselves under. Instead of following leadership as part of the community, they will turn aside. Now, when mentioning the death penalty, I have to refer back to Daniel's teaching on stoning in the Galatians series. How the spirit of the law, as shown here, its purpose was to remove the evil. Rebellion is evil. If you're rebelling, it would be better that you remove yourself than God punish you. Now, what we read today isn't something I just made up. This is actual Torah read straight out of the Bible. The community claims to be Torah observant. They need to enforce the authority of the leaders. If they're walking in Torah, they need to remove those who seek to subvert the community's leadership. If someone rebels against the authority they put themselves under, if they're walking to the right or the left, they are rebelling against the Torah. They are rebelling against God. Shabbat Shalom.